Greetings all on this eve of 2018, back again with part 2 of my analysis of the movie Fight Club. As a brief recap of part 1, our protagonist, also known as the narrator, is a sleepless white-collar stiff, living a life void of pleasure, pain, and purpose. He turns to consumerism, attempting to shop his way into a meaningful sense of self, and it fails miserably. Plagued by insomnia and his personality on the verge of shattering, he turns to the touchy-feely, emotive psychobabble of self-help groups and finds enough relief through the emotional release that he's able to sleep, but unknown to him, not enough to abate the continued fragmenting of his personality. Deluded in the belief that his self-help endeavors are a newfound panacea in his life, and relishing the attention he is getting from others, the narrator begins binging on different meetings, posing as someone with everything from tuberculosis to different forms of cancer. In one particularly interesting segment, he is in a cancer support group. The leader is taking the group through a guided imagery meditation in which they are to enter their cave, a place constructed by the unconscious of the individual. And in the case of the narrator, it is a cave of ice, cold and somewhat forbidding. In there he finds his power animal, as much as you can call it that. It's a penguin, quite fitting for the narrator. His power animal is a flightless bird. The penguin speaks to him with one simple word. "Slide," it says, and leaps onto a downward slope of ice, giggling like a child. Slide, as though to just let go of control and enjoy life, something the narrator is wholly incapable of doing. He can't let go because it's not in the nature of his rigidly controlled, now faltering personality. More so, he knows that he's an imposter, manipulating others for attention with an act that requires too much control to just surrender. But it all still seems to be working for him in a fashion. "Every evening I died," he says, "and every evening I was resurrected." This is the first time in the movie that the narrator cracks a smile. He is content with his ruse and the control it requires. Until the night when Marla Singer, played by Helena Bonham Carter, enters his testicular cancer support group. "She ruined everything," said the narrator, as she entered the room, cigarette dangling from her lips. And indeed she did. This is a fascinating scene. Here we have what is, at least metaphorically speaking, perhaps the last truly sacred male space. Even aside from the feminized self-help influence and in the aftermath of testosterone-ravaging surgeries and treatments, this was a decidedly male space. After raising a few eyebrows with their entry into the room, the men, however, quickly resigned themselves to her presence, just like in real life. And so now we have the complete picture of what male space looks like in 1999, complete with a woman barging in and stinking up the room, full as it is with deflated, defeated masculinity. The narrator is less complacent and quietly seethes about her invasion of his space. Seeing that she mirrors and indeed amplifies his disingenuous presence in the group, he takes an instant dislike to her, even though it is to be revealed that he's also sexually attracted to her. The next sequence is quite important, as is Marla to our storyline. She is the only female character in the film. Her presence as an archetype as well as a character are both critical to the narrator. An interesting footnote here is that the character of Marla was loosely fashioned off the adult life of child actress Judy Garland, who played Dorothy in the original Wizard of Oz. Garland was a notorious lush and barfly who died of barbiturate overdose in 1969 at the age of 47. The costume designer and makeup artist for Fight Club did an admirable job of giving Marla the shop-worn, second-hand look of washed-up femininity that the role demanded. And her presence in the space that the narrator had created for himself proved terminally disruptive. With her in the room, he is robbed of his emotional release, and the insomnia returns. In the next cancer support group, there's another guided meditation. This time, when the narrator enters the sanctuary of his cave, the penguin is gone, and there sits Marla, puffing on a cigarette. I'm sure this is intended to let us know just how pervasive Marla has become in his mind. Even in the privacy of his inner sanctum, there she is, dominating the landscape. And just as his power animal had done before, she issues a one-word command. Slide. She issues the edict casually, as though to say, I know I'm not supposed to be here. I know this is ruining things for you. Just let it go and slide. Finally, after the group meeting, he ignores her command and follows her into the street, trying to convince her to stay away from the meetings he attends. Noteworthy during this interaction is that Marla walks into the street directly in front of traffic, which comes to a screeching halt just short of hitting her. She appears not to even notice, like she was certain that she would never suffer so much as a scratch. I couldn't help but see this as a glowing example of female privilege, even for the disheveled bargain basement Marla. Every time I watched this scene, I heard a faint voice saying, Don't tell me to look both ways before I cross the street. Tell cars not to hit me. And by God, the cars complied. She goes directly from stopping traffic into a laundromat, where she steals clothes right out of the dryers and walks down the street with them to sell them to a business. The narrator follows her along the way like a hopeful panhandler, continuing his efforts to strike a deal with the intrusive woman. The fact that Marla is a thief is treated with secondary consideration, as though it is just a minor observation taking a back seat to her presence as a woman. Again, just like real life. Finally, Marla agrees to a compromise, makeshift schedule that allows the narrator to attend the groups on a schedule without her there. And then, almost as if it is an afterthought, the narrator asks for her phone number, just in case they want to switch nights or something like that. But of course, this is not really just an afterthought. It is our first real indication that he is sexually attracted to his nemesis. As we have already learned about the narrator, he seldom deals with anything directly. He does, in fact, work his way around or flat out avoid anything remotely complex or interpersonal. This tendency is at once his survival mechanism and the source of most of his problems. He successfully buries most of his issues and avoids action on them. He refuses to think about his unfulfilled ambitions, his sexual frustration, and his isolation. At the same time, all of these avoided conflicts well up from the depth of his unconscious and destroys his sleep. It is similar to how he buries the moral conflicts in his work traveling the country as a recall coordinator for an automobile company. He explains this to a fellow passenger on one of his flights. On a long enough timeline, the survival rate for everyone drops to 0, he says. I was a recall coordinator. My job was to apply the formula. A new car built by my company leaves somewhere traveling at 60 miles per hour. The rear differential locks up. The car crashes and burns with everyone trapped inside. Now, should we initiate a recall? Take the number of vehicles in the field, A, multiply by the probable rate of failure, B, then multiply the result by the average out-of-court settlement, C. A times B times C equals X. If X is less than the cost of a recall, we don't do one. Immediately after giving this explanation, he submerges himself in the fantasy of the plane he's on in a mid-air collision. His thoughts about that fiery death are the second time in the movie that he smiles. Unlike the moral complications of his work, however, he can't avoid his attraction to Marla, and he can't just let go and slide into it. She is with him, invading his thoughts, triggering feelings and urges that he does not want to contend with. His normal defenses, even the ones that leave him sleepless, aren't working for him. The fracturing of his personality comes on full force and opens the door for Tyler Durden to come to the rescue and to unleash hell on the world around him, which is where we will pick up in part 3 of this series on Fight Club. In closing, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you who have supported this channel and the work I do here over the past year. Whether it's on Patreon, your subscriptions, or your one-time donations, your support has been genuinely appreciated. I get emails regularly, far too many to answer these days, from men telling me that the material here has been life-saving. And I believe that they're right. There has never been a time before that red pill material was so badly needed, the world being what it is today. Just know that when I get emails informing me that the work has helped them avoid suicide or a potential disaster with a woman, or even just help them understand that they weren't crazy, it was your support that made that possible. It's a really satisfying role for me to be able to play in life, and I'm deeply grateful to you for allowing me to do it. So thank you for that. As always, I hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you next time. Happy New Year's, guys.